brightly and put that light on our forthcoming titles and authors.
I love that. Um, and we are now saying that live,
All right.
you and I. And dun, 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 Ben, who is almost on time.
Hey, Ben.
We're doing it exactly 6 o'clock.
It was pretty good. It was yeah, it was only a half second. It was
Okay,
all
all right.
good.
It's New Mexico
Oh, it's
time.
like
We're,
that
we're,
today,
we're
huh?
being slow.
It's New Mexico time. Okay.
Yeah, land of manana.
I'm good with that. Although, isn't it technically, I guess, like, isn't Australia's, like, isn't it tomorrow for us? In
They're ahead of us.
They're ahead of us, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
Japan.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Sometimes I ask my students to let me know how today turns out. They're in
Nice.
Japan.
Yeah, and they stare at you, basically.
Yes, they do. Even online.
Like, what? Yeah, and then they just probably keep going because it's like, I don't know how to respond
This
to
class
that.
will end. This too shall pass.
Yeah, this teacher as well shall move on at some point. Well, for those of you who may be watching, I want to welcome you to yet another Run Wild with Us. Ask us whatever the frig you want. This is your opportunity every week to ask the editors of Running Wild and RIZE any kind of question you may have. It can be around the craft of writing, it can be around publishing, it could be marketing, it could be sales, it could be why the hell are you doing this? It can be whatever. It's all good. And I am here this week with two of our fantastic acquisition and editors. Cody Cisco, who we just announced as being our new acquisition editor for RIZE, and Ben White, who is one of our acquisition editors for Running Wild. And I just hang out with these guys because they're fabulous, and they let me do it. So I can't think of a better reason. So with that, I am actually gonna take a moment, and this just popped in my head. And by the way, I don't prep these guys with any of the questions that I personally ask. It's pretty random, and let's just say that it would be really nice of me if I actually did give them a heads up when I came up with a question. But haha, tough noogies. So, but this is a question that I get a lot, and I thought, you know what, I never asked you guys this, so may as well ask it. So the question is, why why be an acquisition editor for Running Wild and or RIZE, and actually why edit at all? Because for anyone who has never been an editor before, it is a lot of frigging work.
Mm-hmm.
And you are actually pretty much putting yourself on the line quite a bit, because for many authors, they're whatever prose they've written, it could whether it's fiction or nonfiction, they are very, 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 very emotionally engaged in it. That is not a diss, by the way, because we're all also authors as well.
Yeah.
But so why put yourself in that position? So with that, since we just announced that Cody's the man of the hour, we'll start with Cody.
Yeah. Okay. I think so I started in publishing as a writer. That's kind of my home base. And there's the craft of it, and I think everybody who's tried their hand at writing, especially fiction, understands that it's a difficult process to get the words on the page and to have the story reflect your vision for it is difficult. Like, the craft itself takes time to learn, and you always improving. And so, and then there's the publishing side, which is even more of a kind of labyrinth, from a writer's perspective, to navigate, to figure out, okay, well, how do you get your book out in the world? Who do you work with? What's the process? Like, what are the steps? Like, all of that can be so mysterious and difficult, and you learn. But even once you understand it, it's still a difficult process. So, my view is that as an editor, it's my role to help writers through both of those journeys. And it's a privilege too, because writing stories is the closest thing that we have to magic, in terms of we create things out of nothing, and all of a sudden someone's going on a whole journey thanks to your words. And as as editors, we get to help make that happen, and to be there when writers hit their low point and need some help, or just to help them get through the process. So why wouldn't I do this?
Well, all right, Ben. Let's see what you come up with.
Not a
That was a
competition.
fantastic.
Not a competition.
It is true. It is not a competition, but that was a fabulous answer.
I'm with Cody.
You could just say ditto.
Yeah. Oh, that was there a couple of times when Cody was speaking, but but it's right. It's true. And how I came about it was being published by Running Wild Press first with a novella that some of you may have heard me say this before, but I called Lisa and said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah."
He literally did, actually, just so you know.
And so it was kind of an opportunity to pay back a little bit and say, I've got one published, and maybe I can help somebody else get their work published. And Running Wild Press was a good place to be. So a little bit of loyalty to Lisa and Running Wild Press, but personally, it connected to my approach to teaching, and it's different, but it's the same. And because when I edit as a reader, and if there's confusing parts where I want to put the book down, I'm not the only one. I know I'm not. So if the author finally has a tangible audience reading their work and providing feedback, and not just that invisible audience out there, I hope somebody gets it someday, but somebody actually giving them feedback, I think that's a great role to have. And then to become the acquisition editor, that was just the next step in learning that side of the publishing world, or more of the publishing world. That, like Cody said, it's a mystery and a labyrinth. So it was just a good opportunity for me as a writer to see that part and understand that part, and help other authors that I consider a lot more talented than me in a lot of times, a lot of ways, in different ways maybe. But so that's how I got here. And I'm not doing anything on Thursday nights anyway. So here I am.
Well, and in all honesty, everybody who's watching this, you need to read both Cody and Ben's works. I mean, they're both phenomenal authors. And I remember the day when Ben called me, like he literally called me and said, "Are you sure?" And there was a little kid inside of me that went, "Have you lost your mind? Like, this is amazing." And I think I didn't say that. I forced myself not to say that. Instead, I believe I just said, "Yeah, I absolutely, let's totally do this," And I don't know about Ben and Cody. I know for me, because someone actually, I think this was during a recent interview for a conference, they asked me the same question. And I'll be honest, I never thought I would be an editor, because to me, editors were here. Like, the best editors that I've ever known were way far beyond me. And I never thought that I was good enough to be an editor. And I say that with love, because to me, the best editors I've ever encountered, they were the ones who, what both Ben and Cody described, they came to stories, they came to the prose with an eye for, how can I help this author say this story in a way that others are going to see how brilliant they are. And they ask leading questions to bring that out of those authors. And that's not easy. That is really difficult. And that takes a really deep understanding of the craft of writing, a deep understanding of storytelling, and an intent of, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you be the best that you and that your story can possibly be. And that is a place that it's hard to find. It is hard to find people who really get that. And these guys know, I mean, you literally have to take a test to work for Running Wild, which is pretty ballsy of us if you think about it. But we do it anyway. So Peter, I'm assuming, I don't know if you were watching, but the question was, why be an acquisition editor and why be an editor? Because it is a super hard job. It's a pretty ballsy job. And it's one where you're helping people take things that they consider to be a part of their soul and elevate it to what it can possibly, the best that it can possibly be. So you're really putting yourself in some ways a fabulous position, but in some ways it can be considered a challenging position. So why do it?
Because it's another facet of the craft of writing. And that's what I think, because you're looking at a story that someone has poured their heart and soul into, like you just said, and you're like, and again, as you just said, how can we make this better? How can I see this from an outside perspective that can help shape and craft and colorize the story a little bit more? Because there are channels that we fall into as authors that we forget about. We forget about scenery. We forget about place. We forget about details because we're writing the story. We're writing the dialogue, and we see what's going on in our minds, but we don't see it on the page. So as an editor, I can bring that to the story, say, just a simple question: where are we? What's going on? How does the character feel about that? As far as being an acquisition editor goes, I mean, that's just one of the coolest jobs I've ever had. I think it's awesome that I'm able to say, this book is ready. Let's put some work into it. Let's give it an editor and we'll go. And this one needs a little bit more work. Let's talk with an author and see what we can come up with. That kind of thing. So it's like I said, it's another facet of writing that is on top of, as well as beside the writing that I do on my own, because I learn from the stories I edit as well as learning from the stories I write. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. And you owe me.
I do. I'm 2 months late. I know.
Just a not so gentle reminder. Peter owes me a novel, just so you know.
I do.
Which I know he'll get to me, which is why this is the only peer pressure you're going to get right now. So, Vaya, hi Vaya, nice to see you. Asks, what does a typical day look like for each of you? So with that, why don't we do it in the reverse order? Why don't we start with Peter, then go to Ben, then go to Cody? So Peter, what do you think?
Typical day is just getting up, going to work, and I'm fortunate enough to work from home. So I have my computer, my laptop next to me, so I'm able to, edit or dabble in my stories while I'm working during, off periods, or whatever, slow periods. And then progressing through the day till when I've spent some time with my wife, my best friend, and then I'm able to hunker down and do some writing from about 9 until midnight at night. So a little cooling off period from 12 to 12:30, and then we start it all over again. I'm not an early person like I know some people are. 4 o'clock in the morning is a bit crazy for me, but I like writing late at night. I think every day it's a fun commitment to have.
Yeah, thanks for outing me. And by the way, Peter's wife, Kathy's phenomenal for anyone who's watching. So Ben, what about you? What does a typical day look like?
I'm glad he outed you and not me, because I'm up at 2:30 in the morning. And,
that's
true. And that's the writing time between 2:30 and say 5 o'clock, and then I'll go swim. I swam a mile this morning. And, then come back, and if I've got to go across the river into Albuquerque, I'll go and have meetings, and I'll have I do have one face-to-face class this semester. But the rest of the time is grading and getting schoolwork out of the way. And then it's either editing or it's editing or reading something I'm about to edit. And or I have carved out some time to read. reading a book now called Shadows of Berlin, which is an interesting concept. But so I think you do need to take a break from that work, not just to write, but also to read, because it all goes to the craft, like Peter was saying. It's all part of the craft.
How about you, Cody?
Yeah, every day, I'd say every day is a little bit different, although every day is definitely a lot of time in front of the computer. Today, it's a big day because we are publishing the Made in LA anthology. So today I put up all the website and the bios and did the final order of the book, which is going to oh, wait, no, we're doing a cover reveal next week. No one saw that. Forget what you saw. Whoops. No, it's all good. So, so some of that's around making sure the book progresses through its schedule and we are able to publish it on the timeline that we agreed to. And then editing. So I was just working on a manuscript for Running Wild that is on schedule. So that's good. And then I also organize literary events. So I have what someone called a portfolio career, which was a nice way of saying a lot of shit coming at me all the time that I've committed to do, but it's all good. But so every day, it's really okay, figuring out what's burning, what fires need to be put out, and then what I can do from there. The other thing that's keeping me really busy lately is the Editorial Freelancers Association. And we're doing a conference in August. So making that happen is a big lift, but it's going to be great. It's going to be in DC, and I would love it if you all came.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, actually. I'm in.
I'll send you the info.
Awesome. Perfect. So my day sounds like right now it's very much more of a portfolio career as well. I'm up around 4:00. I do cross training, and then I do at least a 2.5 mile walk first thing in the morning. Almost, I'd say pretty much every morning. And then from there, as Cody described, I put out fires. So whatever is hot, I take care of it, and it's always something new each day. Oftentimes it's stuff that I'm like, where did that come from? Yeah, okay. Right now, we're in the middle of a Kickstarter campaign to raise funds so we can up our game in terms of marketing and publicity for our books, because hey, these stories really deserve to have a lot of readers. So the best way to get that is to get that marketing out there, to get the word out. So we're in the middle of that. I am also in the middle of currently writing an essay for the 100th anniversary of Weird Tales about Lovecraft's Circle. So for those of you who may not be familiar, Lovecraft was an infamous pen paler. He had some say he'd written hundreds of thousands of letters in his lifetime, and he by the way, he didn't live all that long, so that's kind of impressive. And those who were considered to be within the circle were individuals who were authors that he had befriended, and he then had introduced them to one another, and they each influenced each other's writing and editing careers, and then went on to be considered icons within sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, and horror. So it's actually pretty interesting to read about these guys and how they influenced one another. So anyway, so look for that. My deadline to have it in is to be by end of day tomorrow. So when we get off of this and I have a quick dinner, that is going to be what I'll be working on next. For me to actually, and then I also am currently editing two anthologies and 3 novels, I believe, that I will be returning to as soon as I can. I'm also negotiating contracts with authors with whom we recently made offers to. And for me to actually write for myself, I have to set deadlines for myself, and I base my timelines on those deadlines. So kind of what both Cody, Ben, and Peter also described. Based on that timeline, I'll then say, okay, during this period of time, I need to write a minimum of like 1,000 words a day, or I need to work on an outline that I will then leverage to be the baseline for those 1,000 words a day. And then I'll make sure that, I'm going to knock it out within that timeline. And then I hand it off to my editor, and my editor right now is Ben, who then will give me great feedback. And then I'll do revisions based on that. So that is a terribly long answer of what a day looks like. But right now that's kind of what a day looks like. We had Caroline Shannon Davenport says, congrats, Cody. Congrats.
Thank you, Caroline.
And as does Via. And CJ says hello from Pennsylvania. Cremo generously says, hi, Lisa, I admire you for your generosity and your honesty. Honestly, I admire all of these gentlemen as well for the same reasons. I wish we could share our acquisition editor sessions when we're acquiring books, because I don't know about these guys, but at least I feel like we can all be very honest with one another when we agree or disagree about a story, and whether it's ready to be acquired or not. And I think the fact that we have that comfort among us to be honest and to tell what we really feel about a title is huge. And it enables us to take chances on stories that it may need 1 or 2 rounds of collaborative editing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we're very open with one another, and we're willing to say, I mean, these gentlemen can attribute to the fact that, like, our last session, there were a couple of times we said, you know what, let's reach out to the author and ask, are you open to a highly collaborative editorial process? Because we see a lot of potential in this, but we can also tell that there are some sections that could use more focus than others. And I'm sure that there are different acquisition rooms that they don't feel comfortable having that conversation, right? They don't feel comfortable asking those questions. And I don't know. I just think that's a tremendous tribute to these gentlemen, as well as to Joelle, who's in charge of our licensing and strategy, and Laura, who's in charge of our marketing and operations. Because I think us as a leadership team really, if we couldn't have those conversations, this would not be the same company. So Caroline says, the amazing thing I find with all of you is your commitment to helping others and the lack of your ego leading. I'm on your page and am so grateful to being with you and having been drawn into this group. It is about using your talent in every way you can in a wonderful collaboration with like-minded people. Thank you. Ditto. Thank you. That's pretty amazing. And Via, Peter, just so you know, Via says, I'm with Peter. I'm a night writer. So you guys, I'm sure, are like secretly collaborating at like midnight. So, wow, that was a lot. I think I got everything so far. So for anybody who is watching, and if you are not familiar with our process, all you got to do if you have a question is go ahead and pop it into the comments section. And then we repeat the question and then take turns in repeating those questions. Ron Dowell says, speaking of editing, I think I'm at the final stage, have engaged Authority Titans, and wonder if there's anything else I should do to keep the ball rolling on Crooked Out of Compton, Rise imprint. So yes, Ron. So Ron is one of our authors. We are in the final stages of getting it to market. Ron, all you got to do is when Evangeline, so for those of you who are not familiar, Evangeline's one of our phenomenal product managers. Just take her lead. She's going to provide, if she hasn't already, lots of amazing templates for you to use around marketing and publicity. We're going to ask you for a lot of information to kind of help that ball rolling so that we can get your story, Crooked Out of Compton, to market. And also put it in front of the Seymour Agency, which is the agency that we partner with to get our stories in front of producers and audiobook companies and you name it, so that we have as many opportunities as we can to get as many fans as possible. So I think you're in a good place. Awesome. So yeah, so and anyone has any more questions, again, just pop them into the comments section. And if you're watching this and it is not Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time or 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time, then go ahead and put your questions in the comments section, because I always go back and I'll review the questions in between sessions, so that if anything comes up during the course of the week, I'll have it on hand for the next session, so that we can all ask each other whatever the question may be. So, so gentlemen, out of curiosity, do you guys have any questions for each other or for me, or anything interesting going on this week that you want to share?
I was mentioning that back to the acquisition team. There are some good, honest conversations, but there's a great deal of trust in there too. To listen and ask the question, "What do you see?" Because I don't see it, and then listen to that answer, and it only enhances the process of choosing the right books and the books that are ready, and then, or like Lisa said, make the comments back. But it's always enlightening. That's an extra benefit of being an acquisitions editor on a team of acquisition editors. You get to learn. I get to learn from the rest of the team, and that's again rewarding towards the craft.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see what each of us notices in a manuscript, right? Like the where we focus or what potential we see that benefits us to hear from each other.
Yeah, I think the fact that we don't put ego into what we edit, that is absolutely not about us, is one of the best feelings to being an editor, because this isn't about me when I'm editing a work. This is about the work being independent of myself and the author, so that the work can be the best it can be. And the author has to take a step back. So this is not me. This is my story. And as an editor, I'm saying this is not me at all. I'm going to help you and your story become that much better, that much more cohesive, that much more colorful kind of way. So ego it never it's just not an issue.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's so much. Because I have been on teams for other publications, that it was clear that decisions were being made based on that individual editor's personal desires. It wasn't about the publication. It wasn't about the strength of the work. It was really about that individual. And that actually that made me sad, because I was like, it's a shame that it's such a disservice to anyone who's engaged in that publication to not be seen. Like, to me, that's a sign of not really seeing the authors and not really seeing the stories and not bothering to do so.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to work with Running Wild is that it is a, you know, an indie press. If this was, you know, a large company, you would have to play the game of kind of empire building. You know, you'd be like, that's my title, and kind of try to just take them all for yourself. And like, but that's the way it works if you want to move up, because of the way the hierarchy is, and that's not how we're doing it here. You know, it's about us collaborating to find the best books and move them through into the public. Yeah, if I came to it, and speaking of specific manuscripts, if I came into a manuscript with a vision for what I wanted the author to do with it, that's not going to work. Like, that's not going to result in a good end product, because at that point I'm stepping between the story and the author, and there should be nothing in between. As an editor, I should be on the sidelines, kind of coaching and, you know, adding my input and opinion and helping them get to their end goal and not getting in the way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just thinking about what I like most about our acquisitions editor sessions is that nobody bulldozes over anybody else. Everybody's opinion on the call matters. You know, if Ben really believes in a story, then we'll listen. You know, if I believe in a story, the other people will listen, and we'll make a group decision. It's no one person being the leader, and this is how we're going to go. This is what it's going to be. These are the stories we're going to pick. Everybody has a say, and that sort of collaboration is really a wonderful thing to be a part of.
Yeah.
Yep, totally. Well, and it's interesting too, because the acquisition process is so heavily broken, to Cody's point, especially when you're looking at larger companies. And, you know, I think a lot of it, and this is me being a snob, so I'm going to own this now. I think a lot of what's broken, it's not focusing on the strength of the story, and it's not focusing on the strength of the craft of writing that the author's bringing forward. You know, readers don't need to know that this person's a fabulous writer. They just need to bring that to the table, right? And a great editor, a great acquisition editor will be able to recognize that, and will be able to say, "Oh my gosh, this is phenomenal," right? And I know enough. I, as the acquisition editor, know enough and understand enough regarding the craft of writing and regarding narrative and what makes a strong narrative, to bring that to the table and to help the author, to Cody's point, elevate and make this a complete and cohesive, if it's not, right? Or if it is, fabulous, right? Let's talk about what are we accomplishing within this in this narrative? What's the intent of what we've put on the page? And just making sure that we're helping the author make that happen. And so many publications, again, me being a snob, completely owning it, the editors aren't knowledgeable enough, right? They haven't studied craft enough, and, you know, they weren't necessarily put in the position they were put in because of their knowledge and their experience and their desire to benefit others and to put great things in the world for readers and fans. So, you know, to me, that was very important, to make sure that everyone who was in the room, or everyone who is in the room for our acquisition sessions, are coming from that place, and are coming from that place without ego, so that we can do what's best and benefit authors and readers, and thereby our organization to its utmost, if that makes sense. So, Caroline asks, what goals do each of you have for the coming week? All right, you guys, whoever wants to start, go for it.
What Caroline's really asking is, when are you going to get to my novel, Ben?
Yeah.
So it's you moved up. You're right there, Caroline. You're gonna be sick of me by the end of April, but that's my goal, because I've got one novel that the author is finishing off some last minute touches that he wants to polish. And he's already got blurbs, so that's ready for production, pretty close to production. Another novel, it's a series of short stories, but it's linked based on Klaus Barbie in Lyon, France. And I've enjoyed reading it more than even editing it. But back to a point that Cody made about making those suggestions and working with the author. There was a point where one of her scenes in this collection of stories was, I thought there was a very powerful scene, but then the rest of that section went into a less than powerful scene compared to, based on what I was reading and the emotional connection it made with me. But instead of saying, oh, you got to move this, you've got to, I just mentioned it to her to say, this is what's caused the emotion for me in that scene the most, because they're taking people out of Lyon, and he looks up at his apartment where there was going to be a birthday party that night. And I know that gets you right there. But, but it's really up to her to say, well, the way I wrote it was the way it was flowing when I wrote it. And there's value in that too. So it's a suggestion of, if you want to keep it that way, it's your work, and it is a powerful scene no matter where it goes. It can't come out for sure. But that's some of what I'm working on this week, and then moving over into Cure Part 2.
Ooh, exciting.
Awesome.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Fingers crossed you don't hate it. Let's just put it that way.
I've said it already. I don't hate it already, so you're good to go.
Okay.
Because if I hated something, I'm gonna hate it right away.
Boom.
No, I know the characters, and I like the characters.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to your feedback. It's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely. How about you, Cody? What have you got going on?
I'm due to finish up a manuscript that is a historical fiction based in LA. And we should be done by the end of April. So there's one more full pass, but the current pass is almost through. So that's been great. I'm really excited about Desiree's novel. It's wonderful. And it's really fun to work on a book where the setting is just kind of all around, some of it takes place in Chavez Ravine before Dodger Stadium was built. Some of it's in Boyle Heights. Some of it's in Mount Washington, where I live. So it's actually kind of cool to kind of see that through her perspective. And then the other thing is that we're doing the contributor reveal for the Made in LA Volume 5 tomorrow. So all of that is like a really fun culmination where we get to give props to all of the contributors. And we've been sitting on the news for a while, so it's fun to be able to talk about it.
Awesome. How about you, Peter? What are you up to?
I am working on the novel that I owe you, as well as I'm
sorry.
I've taken too much time away from editing. I have like 2, maybe 3 novels in line to edit, and I'm just chomping at the bit just to get at them. So I need to divide my time between editing the first of those 3 novels and working on my own story, working on finishing it. But yeah, just getting back into the editing flow of things, because I miss it. It's just something that it's addictive. It's very fun. It's very engaging. Mm-hmm. And it really means a lot on a level that you can't really perceive or talk about, but it's there. It's really neat.
Can we talk about that feeling of like the rest of the world kind of drops away when you're totally immersed and you're, working on, you're adding comments or you're doing a line edit or whatever. Like it really takes all of your brain. And some of your heart too.
It's almost more engaging than doing your own writing because you're focusing on someone else's words, someone else's art.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's and I think all of us have referenced the fact that, we try to edit from a reader's perspective. And because of that, it really is, you have to be fully immersed in the story. And so that you can both be engaged from a reader's perspective and apply, the parts of your brain that's saying, oh, well, I think I know what he's trying to do here. I'm not quite sure it works. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Let me ask these leading questions that may help him or her in driving this forward, right? Or make some suggestions that may help round out that scene, or point out, like, well, you had him do this here and now he's doing this here, and that's not cohesive, right? Because sometimes, a lot of times, I mean, all authors do this, and we're all authors, so I think it's safe that we can say this. I mean, you write originally from one perspective or with one intent, and then as you're writing, all of a sudden your characters may do something completely different, and you may not realize that it contradicts what they were
Hmm.
doing earlier. And again, that's okay. That's part of the reason that you have an editor, right? That's why we exist. So, but yeah, and honestly, it's also, for me, it's amazing when an author comes back and we can have an honest conversation, and the revision they provide is like breathtaking, right? I mean, that is just like, oh my God, I feel so incredibly honored. Like, it's just like, this is phenomenal, where honestly, if we get when we get reviews, I just sit there and pray when we get the review that it's going to be like a starred review, because I'm like, this deserves it. Like, this is so damn good. If they don't get, named best of the year or something, I'm going to be offended on behalf of this author, so
Yeah. And that,
yeah.
like, that's really the juice, when if one of my comments on the manuscript unlocks something for them that they take and run with and create something beautiful, like, that's the most you could ask.
Mhm.
It feels
yeah.
really good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I honestly, for what I'm doing this week, I am so crazy behind, and I apologize to everybody that I owe stuff to. So although I'm sitting here teasing Peter that he owes me, I owe like the entire Fill in the Expletive world right now. I have so many emails waiting for my response, because none of them are quick yes, no kind of thing. They all require a much more in-depth response. And I am currently juggling, like I said, I think 4 or 5 different full-length works that I'm editing. I got behind because a couple of them are anthologies, and some authors were more timely in their responses compared to others, which again, that's totally fine. It just means I have to figure out who I'm going to work on next, and it changes the whole timeline for me. So yeah, so I'm sorry if you're waiting for something from me.
Very
And
familiar with that feeling of digging yourself out of the hole of work that is burying you.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm infamous for then saying, okay, here are like 3 or 4 days, and just telling people you're not going to hear from me, just so I can like just knock these out, so that I can get back, at least not be behind or as behind.
Yeah.
And that day may be coming soon. Just so you know, because I keep thinking, all right, today I'm going to do it. And the day ends and I'm like, God damn it. Ah. So, yeah.
Sometimes,
Go
sometimes
ahead.
that
Sorry.
falling behind is necessary. I remember back last summer when I thought I had a great pace going, but I hit a manuscript. It's called Obsidian Waste by Rudolfo Serna, and I was reading through it, and his writing was well, first off, it's a futuristic dystopia that he's writing about. And the writing was very free flowing and poetic, almost like just poetry, but in a prose form. And it hit me about craft. And so what if we, and I bounced this off of him, I said, what if we take these lines and we break them in places where it's not expected to break, and push it over to the right justification, so it looks like it's futuristic and it's a scroll, and we can call it, instead of like part one, we call it scroll such and such, and it made it look like and feel like the reader is an anthropologist in the future finding this and putting it together. And one of the most rewarding things as an editor was when he said, "Yeah, let's do it."
That's cool.
Said, okay, let's do it. And but he said, because he told me, he said, I have this poetic feel to it, and the language and the characters, and they just kind of flow through the scenes, and all the verb tenses were the ing, so it's not even like past tense, it's present tense, whatever you call the ing words. But he said, let's do it. And so it was very rewarding to have that and to see it on the page when we got it back from production. And Kimberly checked with us, I think. She said, "Are you sure this is how you want it?" I said, "Yes, it is." But Rodolfo loved it with the way it looks on the page and the way it reads now. More, it's easier on the reader to read it the way it's broken up now. And so that's it was another rewarding aspect of craft. And remember that craft changes. Craft has always changed, and you want it to. And to find a place where you can help it change is very rewarding. Does that fit a question somewhere? I'm sure it does.
I'm sure it does. It's interesting because I'm reading Tremblay's The Pallbearers Club, and it is written from the perspective of a character who's writing his memoir of when he had formed a pallbearers club when he was in high school, originally with the intent of to help him get into colleges. And within the side lines of the prose are comments from another character who he had allowed to read. And she's like, saying stuff like, "I did not do that," blah, blah, blah. But it's so cool to, like, I personally love finding stories like that enables you, that suddenly it's not just a third person narrative, right? Or it's not just a first person narrative. You are now being immersed into a world that it wouldn't be this world if this author hadn't played with craft in that way. And yeah, I just think it's a lot of fun, which reminds me I need to send Obsidian to a couple of places for review, because I think we need to get that baby highlighted. So
Gino Diaz does that too. From a few years ago, A Brief Importance Life of Oscar Wilde, where he inserts it's a third person narrative, whereas also he's putting his comments in as the author, explaining what's going on and giving even more color to the character and to the story. It's a really neat book.
Oh, I love that book. I love Funat Diaz. He's one of my favorites. So Vaya says, how does the timeline from acceptance to publication work, and how long does that process usually take? Do you guys want me to answer it, or do one of you guys want to take it? I'm gonna take that.
I think there's two pieces. It's important to say there's two pieces to this. One is the time between the manuscript being accepted and the manuscript being finalized, which is where a lot of our work comes in to edit the story, to get it into a good place and polish it and all of that stuff. That depends on what state the manuscript is in when it comes in. So that could be months. That could be, there's a lot of variation there depending on the manuscript. And I'll pass it over to Lisa to talk about the timing between when the final manuscript is delivered and the publication date.
Yeah. So to Cody's point, we've had books that it took all of a week to go through the editing process because it was just little cleanup here and there. And then we've had ones that took like 2 years. And it was because as the author and the editor were collaborating on it, they just kept finding these different opportunities. And again, this was an agreement with the two of them. This was not one dominating the other, right? This was an agreement of, okay, well, why don't we try this? Why don't we try this? Why don't we play with this, right? On average, we did an analysis. It's usually somewhere around 3 to 6 months for the editing process, to Cody's point. Once that is done, it's then handed off. So the editor will hand it off to one of our production managers. The production manager will then reach out to the author and ask for things like, do they have any thoughts on cover design? Do they have any thoughts on what do they want for their bio? What photo do they want on the cover? Do they have an acknowledgments page, right? All of that kind of lovely stuff. And then they run with it from there. They also make sure that all the authors get a marketing plan. They go through an author's questionnaire to kind of help them figure out, what are the best ways to do marketing and publicity. And it's based on both the questionnaire and the marketing planner, based on a combination of some of the best plans that we've seen that some of our more established authors have done. So you're getting, it's like the best of the best. And then also the questionnaire is based on what are some key questions that we already know the Seymour agency, the agency that we work with, what they would commonly ask an author, or that they are commonly asked by those who want to license the stories for audiobook, TV, film, and so on, because it helps them in bringing it to market. Our product managers then also create advanced review copies, and they create what's called a one-pager. The one-pager has certain key questions that's typically asked within the industry by booksellers, bloggers, reviewers, so on, forth and so on, and then provide all that information again to the Seymour agency, and also to, I think there's like over 40 reviewers, bloggers, book reviewers, and influencers that we actually send the advanced review copies to, in the hope that minimally they'll review it, if not at least give us some kind of mention for the story itself. Usually to get the book, the interior files done, the cover design done, and so on, that's usually, I'd say, about a month to 2 months, unless there's a lot of like nitpicking back and forth, which does happen on occasion. And then from that point, it's typically 9 to 12 months at the point of it actually making it to market. And that's actually a dictate of our distributor, because what they do is they provide all this information to booksellers, anything from a Costco to a Target to a Barnes and Noble to like regional distributors, to your local bookseller, to see if there's interest in either A, picking up the title, and B, if they want to do a special deal. So like for an example might be, let's say you published or the story that you wrote is a thriller that's very similar to something else that Barnes and Noble knows already did really, really well. Well, they may say, hey, we would love to publish this, but we want our own special edition that has a special short story involved in it too, as like a prequel or something like that. I completely made this up, by the way. So what they'll then do is then turn around, is our distribution company has like a mini conference, and in that mini conference my tushy sits there and I basically pitch all of the stories that we have planned to go to market in that upcoming couple of months. And and I may even pitch an idea like that, right? Like, hey, we'll give you a special edition that's a prequel, And usually it involves that mini sales conference involves the sales team for our distributor, as well as sometimes key representatives from those larger houses like a Costco. So that was a far too long question, but or answer, but that's that's basically it. Holly Rose says, my question for some last minute fun. Do any of you have guilty pleasure favorite best-selling authors? Like the kind of author that everyone knows their name, ever if they aren't, even if they aren't readers?
There are no guilty pleasures. What you like to read is what you like, and there's no. I mean, some people will be snobs about it, but I don't think there's any room for that on this call.
Great answer. I'm with Cody.
But I mean, I get also that like maybe some names feel like, oh, it's in my community we call it basic. Like you're a basic B if you like certain things.
I just love that you use the term basic.
I can get real cantankerous talking about some of this stuff, but like I actually really like Stephen King. His stuff is really entertaining and it keeps me hooked, and I enjoy it. Right now I'm reading a Terry Pratchett book called The Long Utopia, which is in his like Long Earth series. There's no shame. Yeah. If you don't like something, don't finish it. But if you like something, find every book that author ever wrote.
Right. How about you, Peter?
Unfortunately, I'm not making enough time for myself to read lately, but I'm still stuck in the world of literary. Cormac McCarthy just came out with 2 new books. And I mean, as you all know, I love Cormac McCarthy's writing. His words, his stories are amazing. I thought about Stephen King. His Stephen King story ideas are fantastic. They're phenomenal. And I just admire the man's imagination. But I'm not really into that kind of writing, but really respect what he's been able to accomplish with his talent. So yeah, I don't really have any guilty pleasures or any people that are any writers that I want to read under the table or whatever like that. But kind of boring, I guess. Unfortunately, sorry.
How about you, Ben?
I'll catch myself in October waiting to see who the Nobel laureate is and make sure that I read them and to see why and see if I agree. But I leave with my ego to see if I agree. But from a poet point of view, I know the names, I've heard the names, but I haven't read the names. So sometimes like recently, I picked up Anne Sexton, and it's a great line where she's got the kids. She talks about the curtains babysitting the kids. And it's
oh
just
my
that
God,
vision.
that's fabulous.
Once you find those, it's that you should have read a long time ago, but you didn't. And then you find out that you like that writer. Get what you can and pull from what you can, learn from what you can from them, learn what you can from them. And she also committed suicide in a 67 Mercury, and I'm an old car guy, so that was kind of cool. And there's a website that says, for those of you who are morbid enough to care, this was her last thing she looked at, and it was a steering wheel of a 67 Mercury, which is kind of gruesome, but you find out these things. You live to find out these trivial things, and if it's trivial, I know it.
I read everything, and I will intentionally read those stories that everyone's like, oh my God, this was awful. I'll read it if it's just to find out, like, well, people loved it for a reason, so why? And I don't see any shame in doing that. That's also why I read the Nobel laureate. It's also why I read the National Book Award winner. It's because it's like there's a reason that these people were given the acclaim. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't hundreds, if not thousands, of others who are just as talented and could get their tushy in that spot, right? It's just, hey, let's figure out what this person brought to the table. So, and for a very last minute question, Tejas says, roughly how many ideas do you usually pitch? Every year, Running Wild accepts between 15 and 20 stories, and Rise accepts between 15 and 20 stories. That's our goal. So the number of ideas that are pitched will depend on the number of stories that we publish within that time. That I don't know what's the term for a third, because these sessions don't come every quarter. They come every third of the year, and I don't think there is such a word. But anyway,
Borrow from academia, we can call it a trimester.
There you go. Yes, perfect. Yeah, every trimester. It just depends on the books that are published within that trimester. So with that, we are actually at the end of our period. I want to thank Ben, Peter, and Cody, and congratulate Cody again for joining us. And he's already, well, I mean, he's always been a phenomenal addition to our team. So it's just a total honor to have him as part of our acquisition team. And for those of you watching, thank you for watching. If you are watching and it is not Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m., it's all good. Just go ahead, pop your questions into the comments section, and we will respond next week. And with that, thanks, guys. I will see you next week.
Thank
Ciao.
you, Lisa.